Hi everyone, we are live here on Instagram at the same time. We are recording here on YouTube and welcome to this live Q&A session. One question that I received was what kind of books I can recommend for management consultants. And there are basically always three books that I recommend. So the first one is McKinsey Way and McKinsey Mind. I always name those are two books, but the content is very, very similar. And this book is written by an ex-McKinsey partner, actually I think two McKinsey partners, and they talk a little bit about how McKinsey works. They talk about problem solving. So it's a very, very good book. So this is the first book that I always recommend. So the McKinsey Mind, McKinsey Way. The second book that I really liked was The Aspiring Advisor by Moritz Dressel. This book is really, so Moritz was working I think for Deloitte in the M&A department, and he really talks about this journey that you have, like starting preparing for day one in consulting and then giving you some tips how to pursue your career. And I really like the book because this really gives you a good kind of impression, it's a very use case based, I would say, because it really starts 1 week before you join consulting, and it guides you through the various steps. And he also talks about like simple stuff like what should you wear, like how to behave in the first week, how to behave in your first calls and stuff like that. So I really like that one. And the third one is Correct It, that I always recommend. And I also made a a book review on YouTube about this book, and this book is actually pretty cool because it talks about problem solving in very, very great detail. So it talks about all the analysis tools that you can use. It talks about the problem solving process. So this is really a book that I liked very, very much. So those are the three books. So it's first McKinsey Way and McKinsey Mind, then it's second The Aspiring Advisor, and then it's third Correct It. So one question that I really liked was the question, what is the best career path to get rich? And I think the person who asked the question really expected me to say it's consulting or it's investment banking or whatsoever. But the real answer here is, and this is what I learned from my mentor, is the key is that you really find the key thing is that you really find what you love, and then that you go all out. Because the reason is, to become rich, to become really wealthy, you have to do what you love. And the reason for that is that no matter in what kind of profession you are, to get rich or to get wealthy, you have to work a lot. You have to sacrifice a lot, okay? All the weekends that you have to sacrifice, to go that extra mile, all the long evenings, all, the short nights. And it's really not possible to put in the effort if you don't like what you do, okay? So the short answer to that question is that it really doesn't matter. So the profession, it doesn't matter, because if you take a look at the Forbes 500, and I really recommend to do that, then you will see that like in the top 50, there are people from various industries, okay? People from in the tech sector, obviously, but also like sports or media or insurance, and also investing. It's really, it doesn't matter what the profession is. It's really all about that you find your niche, that you find what you love, because this enables you to really love your work and to put in a lot of effort. And that's, in my opinion, is the key to success. Charlotte asks, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Well, that's a tough question. I'm very ambitious, and I see myself probably that I have my own consulting firm, also my own private equity firm. That's probably what I want to do in 10 years. Because the thing is, I'm pretty sure that I'm not in management consulting, to only stay there for like 1 or 2 years. That time is already over. And I think, if you are a project manager, then you usually stay until a partner. And the next step from being a partner is obviously to found your own firm. And also, the next step to that is that you start investing your own money in private equity. And that's probably what I want to do within the next 10 years. Have you cooperated with a student consultancy? What do you mean by cooperated? So I have done some live sessions with them. So there are like several student consultancies where I did 1 hour talks on the weekend, for example. So if you're interested in that, then just reach out to me. I always love to get in touch with student consultancies, because I was in a student consultancy myself, and I learned so much there. It brought me so much value. It was really the foundation of all the skills, of all the mindset, of the network that I have, so I'm always, very happy to kind of, do some live talks and do some sessions. So if you're interested, then just reach out to me. What's your opinion for internships during the semester? Well, it depends. I think, since if you want to get into consulting, both things are important. Like you need to have great practical experiences, but you also need to have awesome grades. So what I would recommend is to really focus on one at a time. So this means that if you're during the semester, if you have classes, if you have exams, that you really put all the focus into studying and preparing for those exams, and then typically during the semester break, that you then focus completely on the internships. So I did both. So I tried to do internships during the semester back then, but it didn't really work out, because I was always between two chairs, because at the one hand I wanted to do a great internship, but then I had some classes that I had to attend, and I couldn't really focus on the classes, I couldn't really focus on the internship. So I would really recommend to focus on your studies during the semester, and then at the semester breaks that you do your internships there. Claudia asks, what's the main step for create an enterprise? Well, I think the first thing that you should do is that you think about what kind of problem can you solve, okay? Because as an entrepreneur, then you should typically solve a problem, okay? And it's the same like at Mastering Consulting. So when I started the channel, the problem was, okay, people need to learn consulting skills, okay, to be prepared for the job. And there's a problem because aren't that many resources out there. And that's why I created Mastering Consulting, where I said, okay, with this channel, I want to solve a problem. I want to help people to understand what consulting is like. I want people to help to understand what kind of skills you need and actively prepare them for their career. So that was my intention. So just the first thing, okay, the first step is that you really find or identify a problem that you want to solve. Then the second step, in my opinion, is that you start doing marketing and start, building a network. And the reason for that is most people focus on the product at the beginning. But if you have a product, but you don't have any kind of channels to sell the product, it doesn't really help a lot. So what I did back then was, that I tried to grow the channel as much as possible. In the first 2 years, I didn't even have a product, okay? And I just, tried to build my network, build the channel, grow the channel. So I started with the sales or with the marketing side first. And after that, as a third step, you develop a product. Because if you want to develop a product, you obviously kind of need the feedback from your audience, from your future customers, okay? So you need to kind of understand what they want. And that it always helps if you already are in touch with people, if you really understand your audience. And so that's my answer. I would focus on 3 steps. First on identifying the problem and finding a solution for that. Second, building marketing and reach out to people. And third, building the product. That's how I would start. Do you exclusively need an MBA, or do courses like Master in Management or Master in Management Consulting and Business Analysis also suffice? Well, it depends where you are and what your goals are. So typically, I have a master's in business administration, so I don't have it's not a typical MBA, but it was a German master's program in management. And it depends where you are. So in Europe, it's very common that you first do a master's. So you do a bachelor's degree, then your master's degree, then you go to work, and maybe then after 4 years you do your MBA. In the US, for example, it's very different. There you have your bachelor's degree first, then it's very common that you go to the job for, let's say 3 years or so, and that you then do your master's. So it's not necessary. You can even join consulting with a bachelor, right? So that's very normal. It's just like, I always recommend to do an MBA for people who want to change careers. Because if you worked in one sector for a couple of years, and if you already have some work experience, and then you want to move to consulting, people will always ask, okay, maybe you weren't qualified before for management consulting, so why are you now? And then it's always easier to say, hey, I did an MBA, I invested in my education, now I want to go into consulting. So that's always easier. But, to start in consulting, you don't have to have an MBA, but it highly depends on, where you are, globally speaking, and what you want to do. How much time I would recommend to spend for preparing for GMAT? And the answer is, it highly depends. So it depends on the kind of points that you want to have, the results. So you need obviously more time if you want to score 780, for example, than if you just want to hit the 600, okay? So this is the first factor. The second factor is, how good your skills are in math and in English. So if you're very fluent in English, and if English is your native tongue, obviously, this makes it much easier for you. It's the same with math. So if you have always been very, very strong in math and in head calculations, then, this can typically reduce your preparation time. But if you, have weaknesses in math, for example, then you should invest more time, okay? So this is the second factor. And the third factor is that you really think about, okay, how much time do you have? So do you really have, like, as I had back then, I did prepare for GMAT in my semester break, and I really took like 8 weeks off to prepare for the GMAT. And the other question is, the other model would be that you do it part-time besides your job, and then obviously you need much longer. What I see, with most of my friends and people who prepare for GMAT is that you typically I would say spend 3 weeks to 3 months. This is like the average time. But I've also seen people who prepared in only 2 weeks, and I have seen people who prepared for more than 1 year. Okay, and so it highly depends. Okay, it's very, very hard to say. Then next question: does having CFA certifications like FMBA and BIDA help in securing a consulting job? If so, how significant? Well, I think it has a positive impact, but it's not that important. The reason, I would also say it depends on where you apply. If you apply more for the financial oriented consultancies like the Big Four, KPMG, Deloitte, EY, and so on, then this probably has a higher impact, because those jobs are typically more finance related. But if you go to strategy consulting, it's nice to have, but it's not a must-have, and it only has I would say it plays a minor role. Okay, because the reason is that in consulting we do a lot of management related topics, and they want, at least at the beginning, they want to have you as flexible as possible, and they will stuff you in different projects. So it's very unlikely that in the first 2 years you will be only stuffed at corporate finance related jobs or projects, okay? So they want to give you as much experience in different areas as possible. After that, typically after like 1 or 2 years, you join a practice in management, in strategy consulting, and then obviously if you join the corporate finance practice or private equity practice or whatsoever, then of course it helps, but I would say only at a more senior level, and it's certainly not a requirement that you need to fulfill. But again, if you're interested in all that finance stuff, and if you always wanted to do the CFA, then just do it. But if you say, okay, you just do it for consulting, then I would rather focus on practical experiences and my grades at university. Except of CFA, FRM, what other certification will help most for finance consultants? I'm not really an expert in finance, so what I see is like, doing an MBA or a master's in finance, this is certainly what I see the most. The next step would probably be doing CFA certifications. This is also what I see. And besides that, I think, it only makes sense if you want to focus on a specific area. So especially like the very renowned universities like, Wharton, for example, they offer programs in private equity, for example. So if you want to specialize in that, then you join that school. Or if you want to learn more about venture capital, okay, you could also do a certificate by a very renowned university. this is something that I see, and of course, I mean, this will not help you probably on your CV, but this is just good for your career, is that you are very strong in all the financial modeling skills. So there's a platform called Breaking into Wall Street, and this is where I learned Excel and modeling, and this is certainly something that I can recommend. Okay, so MBA and Masters in Finance, obviously, then CFA, then also certificates in certain finance-related fields from renowned universities, and maybe some practical skills like, Excel, modeling, and so on from Breaking into Wall Street. That's what I recommend. But as I have to say, I'm in strategy consulting. I have not that much of a finance focus. I also read somewhere that having IT skills is going to be a major thing in management consulting. What are your thoughts about that? Well, I wouldn't say so. I mean, it depends. Obviously, if you want to join a firm like Accenture, for example, or go more on the IT implementation side, then obviously you need it. Yeah, it doesn't just make sense. But if we talk about strategy consulting or management consulting, then I think it's certainly not required. I think it helps if we talk about data analysis and data analytics, because my hypothesis is that everything, that is now Excel and PowerPoint, will be in the future more like, tools like, working with Python, working with sophisticated data analysis tools like Celonis or Palantir or Foundry or, Tableau and stuff like that. So I think the data analytics part will be very important in the future, because at some point Excel will be replaced. And I already see it, that many projects that we do are based on tools like Alteryx, as I said, Tableau, Celonis, stuff like that. So I mean, it's not that we implement it, but we recommend to use those tools. And then, of course, we have some interfaces with those tools as strategy consultants. So I would say that, especially the data analytics part is important. And yes, if you have those skills, especially in the next 5 years, this will be certainly a huge advantage. But if we talk about software development and stuff like that, I think, this won't bring much value, because your job is to solve business problems and to do analysis for that. And, software development will not really help you unless, as I said, you want to focus and specialize on IT consulting, or maybe if you want to go, I don't know, there are many consultancies that advise in venturing or stuff like that, then obviously it also helps, but only if we talk about a specialization. How do you see the industry influenced by IT in the immediate future? So what I see is that in strategy consulting, I mean, there are several hypotheses that you could have. Okay, so I think the first one is that, those very large IT giants like, Google, stuff like that, Amazon, that those, also go into consulting. I think, this doesn't make any sense for them. So I don't really think that this will happen. What I also see is that many IT software firms or, and IT analytics firms like Celonis, like Alteryx, like Foundry and Palantir, many of those firms who are really specialized in big data analysis. Those companies are really stepping into the consulting market, okay? Because what their business model is that they sell software, so software licenses, but to sell the software, they often use consulting teams to get into companies, okay? So they have a consulting team, they do some optimization projects, they go into the company, identify improvement potential. So let's take Celonis as an example. So Celonis is based on process mining. What Celonis does is that they send out their consulting teams, they work with the client, they do process analysis for free, and they try to identify potentials that you can realize with Celonis. And obviously, the first part is exactly what we do as consultants. So back then we went into companies, we analyzed all the processes, and then we made a recommendation. And it's exactly what Celonis does. The only thing is that they do the consulting services for free and then try to sell their license. Okay, so this is what they do, and we see many other companies who do that as well. So what does that mean? And I think there's a serious threat, if you want so, for established consultancies, that those companies will take more and more of their market share. And what I think, what that does mean to the established consulting firms is that they either have to, position themselves so that they really develop this kind of software expertise and, are like the interface between the top management and those IT firms. And this is certainly something that we do. This is certainly something that I do in my project. So I try to, learn about those different tools, that I still try to keep the contact to the top management, and I still try to be the strategic advisor, and then try to recommend certain softwares. Okay, this is what I try to do. The other way is that as a consultancy, you also try to develop your own software tools. And we already see that. So McKinsey, BCG, I know, they develop their own software tools, also PwC. So this is also happening. And the interesting thing about it is that I don't really know how it ends, but what I really, really see is that the consulting market is very, very crowded. There are so many consultancies out there. It's very fragmented, the industry at the moment. There are certain technologies that can really disrupt or kind of change the industry. So I think that consulting, and also, we have like the split, like EY, they want to split the consulting business from their auditing business. I think there will be a lot of dynamic in the consulting industry within the next 5 years. And I'm really excited about that, because this obviously opens a lot of opportunities. And I cannot say, what kind of direction this will develop, but I am pretty sure that some change is going on, and that I don't want to say that the consulting industry will be disrupted. This might be a little bit harsh, but there will be changes for sure. Then I hope this brought value to you. I have to stop now because I have a barbecue party starting in like 30 minutes. And pretty cool questions today, so thank you for that. It was very, very interesting to talk to you, to talk with you, to engage with you. As always, those live sessions are always my favorite ones, because I really, really love the interaction. So thank you for that. I wish you a very, very, very great weekend. Here in Munich, in Germany, it's like 34 degrees. It's really, really hot. I don't know where you are at the moment, but I hope it's not as hot as here. And or maybe I hope it's as hot as here and you chill at the lake or somewhere where it's cool and you have some refreshments. So with that being said, I wish you a very, very happy weekend. Talk to you soon. Goodbye, Johannes.